Hi there, I'm Katrina Boss from East Street Station in Goderich, Ontario, and this is a little talk about being honest with our teens. Everyone always struggles with connecting with our teens. They don't listen, they're distant, they don't know, we don't know, they don't think we know what we're talking about, we've never been there, we don't understand what they're going through. And honestly, part of the problem is that most of the time we're actually lying to them about the things that matter most, or the challenges that they're really facing. And some of the things are things like relationships and sex, drugs, alcohol, that kind of thing. Because as parents, we took some weird course that said, whatever you do, don't admit to them what you did, or don't admit that you didn't do it, or just whatever you do, just tell them, don't do it. Just, if I can keep you away from drugs and sex and stuff till you're 21, then it's your problem. You can figure it out after that. But in the meantime, I don't want your life to get screwed up and you lose your education. We have this tirade that goes in our head that says, whatever you do, just tell them no. That's your job as a parent, to tell them no. Well, what if that's not our job as a parent? What if our job as a parent is to connect with them? To have a place where they actually can talk about these things. Because honestly, if my kids are struggling with peer pressure or drugs or sex or all these things, I would rather them be able to talk to me about it. I don't want them to be on their own. I want them to be able to sit down with me and say, Mom, this is what's going on. What do you think? Like, imagine getting to a place where your child actually says, I really value what you think and I want to know. I mean, you're 44 years old, you went through this, blah, blah, blah. What did you learn? What can I do better? How can I avoid the pitfalls? Imagine that being our goal as a parent, that our children actually seek out our advice. They seek out our counsel because we have wisdom. We have experience. We have been there, done that. But we don't access that if we just toe the party line and we just say, you know what, here are the rules. I'm not allowed to say anything else. The kids go, yeah, whatever. In the same way that if you're looking to someone for advice because you're struggling and they're not really telling you the truth, or they're not really being honest because they're afraid that you're going to think less of them if you tell them the truth, or, then you kind of just stop listening. You go, all right, obviously we're not going to have a real conversation because you're not going to tell me the truth anyway. You're not going to be real, so I'm going to go find someone who is. Which is sort of the look that our kids can give us. It's like, yeah, thanks for your help. Thanks for coming out. I'm out of here. So how do we do it? How do we actually connect with our kids so that they actually feel safe enough that they can actually talk to us? Well, the number one thing we have to do is be honest with them. We have to be straight up. Let's take something like sex. I don't want to talk about sex. But what about sex? Most of us had sex before we were married. Some earlier, some later, whatever. But to be able to say that, you know what? I had sex before I got married. This was my experience. If the kids freak out and go, oh my God, I don't want to hear this, well then, honor that too. You don't want to vomit verbally all over them. But maybe they do want to know. And maybe you can say, you know what, honey? Sex is great. It's all wonderful. But honestly, having sex with a 16-year-old boy probably won't rock your socks, and vice versa. It's probably not worth it. Just saying. There's other parts of the relationship that you might enjoy more. Or to be able to say, to actually be able to access your own personal experience and wisdom, to say, you know what? I have friends who, they got diseases when they were, sleeping with kids in high school. And 20 years later, they still have herpes. They still have this disease. And honestly, I don't think they'd tell you it was worth it. Or maybe they got pregnant. Or maybe whatever. These are real fears. These are real issues that it's not about saying no, but it's about empowering our kids to go, all right, I got to really look at this situation and decide whether this is worth it. For me, my line was all about looking at this guy and deciding, do I want to be bound to you forever if I get pregnant? And it's an amazing thing how that just wipes out a huge number of people. Because, when we're a teenager, we're just starting out. We're just sort of figuring out. Maybe we're just dating someone because we want to have somebody. Maybe it's just convenient. Maybe they're just super popular. Or maybe they're a fun partier. Or maybe. But it's an amazing thing when we look at this person and we think, okay, I get pregnant and all of a sudden we're talking about care. My baby's going to come and stay with you. Are you going to get a job? Are you going to help out? Do I want to be with you the rest of my life? Like, that becomes very sobering very quickly. And all of a sudden we look at each other and vice versa, men and boys and girls. I mean, honestly, if you're a young guy and you're looking at some woman and she could get pregnant, honestly, she may be pretty, she may be all kinds of things, but do you want her in your life for the rest of your life? It's an important question. And for whatever reason, for me, that was a good line. It definitely wiped out a huge number of people. But it gave me something to chew on. And that's the key, is to empower our kids to give something. And that may not have been your line. Maybe you had no line, and maybe that's the important thing to share, to say, well, you know what? I wish I had a line. You just have to figure out what really was your truth. Or maybe you had a bad experience. Maybe you had a partner or whatever, and your heart was broken, and it made it worse because you had sex with them. Maybe you had something happen bad, like an abusive situation happen, and that just increased the vulnerability. And maybe those are the things you want to share. And even for men to talk to the boys, or to say, you know what, honestly, this isn't really worth it. It kind of feels like a good time at the time, but in the long run, I kind of have these regrets. These I don't have regrets. To be honest about all of it, don't paint the whole thing black, because sex is great. And the more we tell kids don't have sex, the more they're going to not believe us, because what are we making such a big deal about then? We have to be honest. But to really be able to be honest with them, and then the kids can actually go, okay, well, they'll sense your honesty, and then they'll be able to say, well, here's what's kind of going on. And then if they actually tell you anything, you better shut up and just listen and be honorable, and treat them like a friend, treat them like a confidant, treat them like someone who's actually opening up their heart to you. And this is cone of silence stuff. You can't tell a soul, you can't discuss it with your friends or your sister or your whoever. This is the sacred trust between you and this child, this burgeoning adult. So it's really important to be trustworthy if we want these kids to share with us. So then you look at booze and drugs and all that kind of thing. Well, it's easy to say, well, don't drink because blah, 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 or don't drink until you're 19, or don't. And it's like, honestly, you got to be real about this. To teach kids how to be responsible with booze, that's okay. To say never do it, it's ridiculous. The age limit thing is hysterical, because most things that happen that are bad due to alcohol happens after the age of 19. I mean, there's a bazillion rotten things going on. So to just toe the party line there just doesn't make any sense. But to be able to say to somebody, you know what, getting drunk and going out in the street, here are the bazillion things that could happen, and it just ain't worth it. So let's try to think of another option. Maybe you guys come over here and you hang out and you have your drinks, whatever. Like, make it reasonable so that the kids actually go, okay, this is actually a reasonable way to drink. And let's face it, I mean, that's the most reasonable way for us to drink as adults too. Later on, you find a spot, you have a few drinks. If you're going to get hammered, stay still. Don't go anywhere. Just stay there. Don't travel around the town. These are things we can actually teach our kids based on our experience. This is valuable. Drugs. Oh my God. To just flat out say, drugs are bad, it's ridiculous. Don't do that, especially if you actually have experience with drugs. If you honestly don't, if you never did it, whatever, then say that, you know what, it was never in my world. I had friends that did it. It worked for them. It didn't work for them. I kind of found these guys straight off. These guys did drugs, but they turned out okay. These guys ended up doing like cocaine and junk, and they're messed up. Whatever. Tell them the truth. Tell them exactly what happened. What was your actual experience? If the truth is you're a complete maniac about it, say, you know what, for some reason I'm a complete maniac about it. I don't know why, but I am. Doesn't say anything about you, but I'm kind of crazy. Most of us did have some experience with drugs, and we do have something to share, and we do have wisdom to share, and that's important. If you were a heavy drug user, I have friends who were huge addicts, and they didn't want to actually talk to their kids about drugs, and they would actually say to them, don't ever do drugs, it's a bad scene, trust me, I know, blah, blah, blah. Well, it doesn't help. It's like an incentive for that child to say, well, I'm going to go do drugs because it was so entertaining. It actually took over my parents' life. I'm going to really, it must be great. Instead, to actually say, here's my story. Here's how it kind of started. Here's what it grew into. And honest to God, those are 15 years of my life I can never get back. To actually have that honesty. To explain, to talk about the rotten times, to talk about the good times, talk about all of it, because the kids know if we're being honest. Again, what were your lines? What were your rules? Did they work? Didn't they work? For me, my rule was I did drugs, I did those kind of things. My rule was, for whatever reason my 15-year-old brain put this in there, it said, you know what? That chemical stuff, I don't know if that's still going to be in my system 10 years from now when I want to have kids. So I don't really want this to affect my children. So I'm only going to do drugs that shouldn't affect my kids. So again, my 15-year-old brain said pot and its various derivatives is fine. And even today, at this age, I'm not so sure pot's much worse than drinking. So it seemed to be a good rule. But that was my rule. And it worked. I mean, you're at parties, you smoke pot, you have a drink, whatever. No one cares. No one's pushing it on you. But that was my rule that said, you know what? I'm not going to do the cocaine. I'm not going to do the acid. I'm not going to do that. All drugs are not created equal. And if we just say all drugs are created equal, you're going to have kids doing meth, which actually destroys their brain cells, when they could have, this sounds so funny, but when they could have just been doing pot and just passed out. Honestly, all I'm saying is be real. That's all our kids want. Our kids are people. They want to talk to us, the real people. And if we want to actually be able to help them and impart our wisdom to them, then that wisdom comes from our truth. It comes from our actual experiences or our lack of experiences. But one way or the other, what matters is that we connect to them heart to heart. And that means truth. That means admitting our mistakes. It means talking about the things that did work and the things that didn't. Because in the end, the kids will go, even if we overshare, they may be going, TMI, Mom, too much information. And even then they'll go, well, they certainly shared a lot. Maybe I can open up a little too. They trusted me with that information. Maybe I can trust them too. And that's a big deal. And to me, connecting with the kids, that's the way through. That's the way to do it. But the only way that it works is if we're actually honest and we share our actual truth.